Statutory audit or internal audit, which is the best among the two? I'm sure a lot of CA students who are doing their articleship will have this question in their mind. So in this video, I'm going to decode and discuss the various aspects of both statutory audit, internal audit, and what are the types of learnings and knowledge you can get by doing these two audits. And also in the end, I will tell which is the one which I like the most personally. Okay, so let's jump into this video. Hello friends, my name is CS Karthik and my mission is to spread the knowledge about the world of commerce under one umbrella, which is Combrella. So friends, I am going to keep this video very much simple and relatable to all of you and not discuss any theoretical or technical aspects of stat audit or internal audit. And currently I am doing both stat as well as internal audits, and hence I am sharing all these things from my own very much personal experiences. So the first point, internal audits, if you see, is done by both chartered accountants as well as non-chartered accountants. So for example, other professionals such as cost accountants, MBA finance and accounts people, or a CIA certified internal auditor, which is a foreign course, and other professionals, they also do internal audits. And practically also, if you see, if you go and see the internal audit team of Big Fours, there you will find that apart from CAs, there are various other non-CAs also who are doing the internal audits. But if you take statutory audits, it is done only and only by chartered accountants. So this is the core field of chartered accountants, right? And so you can say statutory audit is like the pride and the fortress of chartered accountants. Nobody can even touch us in this particular field of statutory audit because of its very much technical in nature. So because of this particular point, I feel statutory audit is kind of gets one rank above internal audits because of this very much reason. So the second point is, in stat audit you will be applying accounting standards, Companies Act, Income Tax Act, GST, standards on auditing, FEMA, and so many other things. So if you see, when you do stat audit of one particular company, you need to know all these things and you will get knowledge and exposure in all these areas, right? And this will help you to have learnings and experience in so many fields. And if you see, all these things which I said now are all there in your CA final syllabus also. So doing statutory audit of one company actually helps you to study for your CA final examinations. It helps you for your CA final preparations and also revises you for your CA final examinations. So that is why I would say statutory has kind of extra edge based on because of doing all these things. And also if you see, the real fun in statutory audit comes when you are discussing with your teams and your co-articles, managers and partners, and there are a lot of discussions and debates about what will be the accounting treatment for this particular transaction, what does the accounting standard say, which paragraph of accounting standard you'll have to refer. So you need to read the accounting standards, discuss what will be the valuation of this particular transaction based on accounting standards, what will be the presentation and disclosure aspects which you need to keep in mind, right? And then you will have to see whether the company can borrow as per the Companies Act or not. So like this, so many things you will be discussing in case of a statutory audit, and there will be a lot of debates, arguments, fights, all in a healthy reason, all for healthy cause, okay? So all these debates, arguments and all this, so you'll have a lot of confusion, and from there you will get clarity also as you keep discussing or you keep reading these things more. So from confusion to clarity is what you will get when you do this and discuss about all these things during the case of a statutory audit. And so this is what I feel is the charm of statutory audit, because you will be discussing all the things which are purely technical in nature and which are purely related to the core of CA course, right? So that is the most important thing in case of a statutory audit. Then as you start doing the provision for tax computation, deferred tax computation, then you will have to see what are the timing differences, permanent differences. In income tax computation, you will need to know what will be the disallowances, what are the allowances. So you'll have to discuss that also among your teams, arrive at a final solution. And then for that you will also have to read sections of Income Tax Act like 40A2, 43B, 3614. So all these things, because you are daily reading of about all these things which are very much technical and very much core to a CA field. So all these things, if you see, gives a charm to the statutory audit, and really makes statutory audit a really special and wonderful experience to do. Whereas in internal audit, you will not be going so much in depth like what you do in case of a statutory audit in these particular areas, right? You will still have to know what are the various accounting standards, income tax act compliances, but still you don't have to go deep dive in internal audit for all the things which you do in case of a statutory audit. But in internal audit, you will get a lot of in-depth knowledge about the business processes of the company. That is how the company does particular process. So you will have to go in depth and deep dive into each and every business process of the company, like purchase, sales, FA, inventory, treasury, and so many other things, right? So when you do internal audit, you will get a lot of understanding about the processes, controls, how the company is processing this particular transaction or this particular component, and what are the various controls and checks which are happening in the company. So internal audit gives you a lot of in-depth knowledge and experience about the business processes which are happening within the company. Say for example, let us take the component of P2P, purchases, right? Procurement to pay. In purchases, you will have to see all the processes, right? From PR, purchase requisition, to PO, then GRN, then invoice booking, then AP booking, and then payment, right? And at each and every process, you will need to see and understand what is happening at each and every process, right? What are the controls in place at each and every process? Who is performing those activities? Whether there are proper checks and balances, maker and checker concept is working or not? What are the various softwares which people are using in that particular component level, and whether they are working and whether they are performing their activities correctly or not, within time or not, and what are the risks or control lapses, and what are the observations which you can give or recommendations for improvement of those particular operations in that particular area, say purchase or GRN. You need to understand all these things in depth. So in-depth process understanding, and then you need to give your observations and recommendations for improvement of those processes, right? But same thing if you take in case of a statutory audit, you will be saying if you are seeing a purchases, then you will see whether the PO is there or not, right? If PO is there, numbers are matching, then you will move on and keep moving to the next components. But in the internal audit, you will not just see PO, you will see how the PO is made, who is making the PO, whether the PO was made on time or not, and whether it is properly made. So like this, internal audit is like, I would say, vertical travel. You have to go deep down in each and every process, find out operational inefficiencies, and then give the management recommendations and observations based on which they need to improve, right? So a person doing internal audit, in my experience, I have seen that internal auditors of the company actually know much more about the processes and functions of the company than statutory auditors. Statutory auditors are more concerned about the numbers. They also have to see controls, but if the numbers are fine and making sense, they move on and keep going to the next component. But internal auditors will know more in depth and in detail about the processes and functions which are happening within the company. So the next point is, and I'm sure this point a lot of you will relate to me, which is that statutory auditors are given more respect by the client, okay, and they are also taken more seriously, and you get preferential treatment for statutory auditors than internal auditors, right? And the very most critical part of audit is that you get data on time from the client in a statutory audit, at least as far as compared to internal audit, right? You may not get properly everything on time, but at least comparing to internal audit, you get data on time for a statutory audit. So I think these things again gives statutory audit a little bit higher ranking, I would say, as compared to the internal audit. And then the next point would be statutory audit is like a high pressure audit, right? It's like a high intensity game. It's like India-Pakistan match. Start audit, whether you do for 1 month or whether it's a big audit, even if it takes 3 months, still every day, it's like a high intensity pressure game. You have to be on your toes. You'll have to work late nights, ensure timelines are met, deadlines are properly met. So like that high intensity and high pressure game is a statutory audit. Whereas internal audit you can do little bit in a leisurely manner, 9:30 to 5:30 or 6, you can finish and do little bit calmly. You can have some breathing space. But whereas start audit is like, I would say, is like an exam, right? Even if in exams, no matter how much we prepare, on one day before the exam, you'll always feel that if I have one more week, it'll be always better. Similarly is the case with start audit. You'll always feel, what if we could have had some extra time for doing the audit even more better. So that is one particular thing in case of a statutory audit. So the sixth point is, you can't afford to make mistakes in start audit. Okay, so start audit, if you make mistakes, it will become very costly, because annual report, financial statements, auditors report are circulated to a lot of stakeholders, external agencies, government, regulators, banks, and so many other stakeholders, right? So mistakes in statutory audit, it will be very costly. You can't afford to make mistake, even by mistake. But whereas in internal audits, you can afford to make mistakes. In the sense, you should not, but ideally, but even if by mistake you made a mistake, you can still manage those mistakes in case of an internal audit, because it's only an internal document. It does not go outside to a lot of agencies and regulators, like in the case of a start audit, right? Then the seventh point which I would tell is, if you have done a statutory audit, right? If you have done a start audit, and after that, if you come to an internal audit in your articles, then by doing start audit, you would have got a lot of experience, knowledge, and a good control and grip over accounting standards, income tax act, companies act. And after that, if you come and apply those knowledge in internal audit, you will be able to find out a lot of observations in the books of the client, right? So doing a start audit and then coming to internal audit will help you to do internal audit by getting more good quality observations in the internal audit. Whereas on the other side, if you have done an internal audit in articles and then you are doing some start audit in your articleship itself, then in internal audit you will see a lot of business processes, internal controls, best of compliances. So by doing start audit, you will be able to identify what are the control weaknesses, process gaps, or risk elements in those particular areas, and then you can discuss those with the management before the closure of the audit, so that those points can be improved in the next year, right? So that is one particular thing. So then the final 8 point which I would like to say is that in your articleship, do both of start audit as well as internal audit, especially from the period April to September. These 6 months, do as many start audits as possible and get the most of the experience of the start audit, and the remaining 6 months you can do internal audits. Okay, so that would be the ideal situation, so that after articles, that is after the completion of articles and post qualification, at that time you have experience of both, and then you can decide which is the one which you want to do after your qualification of CA, right? So that would be the ideal situation. And then finally coming to my own choice of liking, I have done both, and I'm doing both start as well as internal audits, but I have done internal audits more than start audits, right? But I personally like doing start audits more because of all the reasons which I have told you now, right? So that's why I would keep start audit little bit more higher in terms of my personal choice. And internal audit, if you see, is kind of a subset of start audit. That is, if in your articles, if you have done only and only start audit, still after qualification you can do internal audits, right? But the other way is kind of very difficult. That is, if in your articleship, if you have done only and only internal audits, then post qualification it will be very difficult to do start audits. I'm not saying it will be impossible, but it will be difficult because of the nature and the mindset and the psyche which you need to have for a start audit, right? So hence, do both in your articleship, get experience of both, and then you can decide and then you can decide which you want to do in the future. So and I would say personally I would like to do 75% of start audits and 25% ratio of internal audits, because I don't want to completely eliminate internal audits, because internal audit gives you breathing space a little bit instead of like start audit with just full on pressure. And also in internal audits you learn business processes which help you doing the start audits, right? So friends, with that we have come to the end of this video. I hope you all like the various experiences and the points which I have thrown upon both start audit and internal audit. And so do let me know in the comment section also what your own experiences of doing start audit and internal audit, and which is the one which you like the most. And I will be very much excited to read all those points. So see you all in the next video. Until then, this is CS Karthik signing off. Thank you and